You know what's driving me nuts?
That I'm the better looking one?
No. Waiting to check out at the grocery store. When I'm hungry, my instincts kick in and I just want to smash through the line.
Well, you should make things safer for all of us and try almonds. They have 4 grams of hunger-slaying fiber, which can be game-changing, even for a man of your stature.
Not a bad idea. But what if I'm in line waiting to buy almonds?
Stick to the self-checkout and remember to breathe.
California almonds. Own your everyday. Every day.
Great news. There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price. And it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
The theme of the weekend was hope, really. College football fans all over the place entered the weekend with a ton of hope. Some of them left the weekend without that hope. You guys got to experience hope in person. I experienced hope in a much different way from the NFL fan angle. We'll get into all of it. You guys had a much better weekend than I did. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio, ESPN2. I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey, sitting next to Mike Golic and Mike Golic Jr. Gentlemen, you had a joyous time, I'm presuming. You guys were there in person. Yeah. Mike, you're wearing the swag. Where's mine?
Yeah, keep waiting.
We didn't have a joyous time, and now we're all working on a holiday, which can only mean one thing. We played this a lot when I was with Greeny and Mike is the old Comte Gong. It's Comte Gong, baby.
Man, bring back the Comte Gong.
In it. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm such a newbie that I didn't even really realize Comte's, and for people that are listening, that, if you work a holiday, then you get to take a holiday later. It was Mike Golic Sr. that told me wisely early in the year. He's like, man, you've been working all these holidays. Make sure you're tracking your Comte's.
There we go. Well done.
Wow. See, and that is a true sign of where everyone is that's currently sitting here this morning, because Fitz and I are at the point where we're so used to just saying yes to whenever they ask us to come do anything that doesn't register for us.
You realize you get something for it.
Dad, about 2 decades in, is like, no, they got to give you something too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a Comte Gong, and we get to talk about football. I mean, you want to talk about a win-win.
You guys were at the stadium. Yeah. You were at one of the marquee matchups in Notre Dame and Michigan. I'm jealous. I've never been. So walk me through it. How amazing was it?
Well, of what we remember,
man,
it was a long weekend, but it was a great weekend. It's the weekend that's got to be good for like you and Jake and our daughter Sydney. For this is the game, especially for you and Jake, the football guys, that you get to see a lot of your former players that are in the league right now, because this is the game, really the only game they can come back for, because their season starts this weekend. So they were really all back strong this past weekend, as the sidelines were full.
Yeah, preseason for NFL, everyone plays on Thursdays, which means everyone rolls into South Bend on Friday and is down on the sideline for the game on Saturday. So that's certainly nice to see, because you get a lot of that interaction of the guys that just finished up playing with this year's current team. And then as far as this year's current team, there's not much better start that you could ask for. You see the rest of the country, and understandably so, starting off with warm-up games. Clemson's beating up on the Furmans of the world, and we get through a lot of those, and we get to open by bringing back one of our most hated rivals for the first time in 4 years. College game day there week 1. So that's a hell of a test for the guys to start off the season for a team that had a lot of question marks, and in some cases answered them, and in some cases have stuff to work on.
That's the thing. And we'll obviously get into this game more as we talk all the football. But for me, I was a little surprised. I thought I wasn't sure what to expect. As Mike said, there were some question marks for Notre Dame, and I was pleasantly surprised at some of the answers. And certainly for Michigan, there's a few other questions that aren't so good.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I mean, I thought going into that game, Michigan was going to have the edge, and I thought we were going to see something special from Shea Patterson. That was just sort of the next logical piece in the progression of Michigan. That's not the way it turned out.
Nope.
And it was a big statement win for Notre Dame. This weekend, there was a lot of statement college football. We'll get into it in a little bit. I'm just trying to delay the inevitable conversation about my sorrow and sadness. So before we get to all things Raiders and Khalil Mack, let's get you caught up on what's trending. In his return to the mound, this guy. I want you to show the way. Angels rookie Shohei Ohtani only lasted 2 1/3 innings, took the loss on Sunday Night Baseball to the Astros.
In the second inning, he deflected a ball that came back at him. He deflected it away, and George Springer from the Astros certainly could tell that. His second at-bat in the third inning, he said for a guy that's usually throwing around 98, 99, he was throwing around 88 to 92. He said, so that definitely affected him. Mike Scioscia's manager said between his hand and his back, he felt it a little bit after. In all honesty, I'm surprised he was pitching. But listen, they followed the rehab for his elbow. He didn't have the Tommy John, and this is where they were. So I guess I understand it. I just was a little shocked. He came back and he did it, quite honestly, but didn't go the way that they all wanted it to.
Yeah, so we get the nice stat now. The only player in Major League history besides Babe Ruth to start in 10 games as a pitcher and hit 10 homers in a single season. But again, at what cost? To me, the risk here never made sense considering their place in the division here, the fact that they're not going anywhere this season. And so what does it really benefit you when something like this comes up? There seemed to be only net loss that was on the table for them.
And I think optics have to matter at this point, right? Because even to your point, Mike, it makes sense that obviously they followed the process, and if he's healthy enough, play him. But they are 18 games back. They're 5 games under 500. They aren't making any noise. So even if he is safe, what's the harm in just saying, hey, let's just wait this thing out, especially when we have to remember that this conversation isn't about Shohei today. It's about Shohei for the next 5 years.
I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I was definitely surprised that he went out there just to your point, Mike, to put himself in another position, and now he's got to deflect the comebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, the player, again, we always talk about this. You've got to pull the player back from what they want, and I'm sure Shohei wants to be out there and wants to pitch and wants to do all these great things, but the team's got to have the bigger plan in mind.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons we kept an eye on the Angels, and it's just a reminder that better luck next year at this point. But there is a reason to keep your eye on everything happening in the West in the NL. Matt Kemp beat the Diamondbacks for the second straight game, hitting a 2-run double in the ninth inning that lifted Los Angeles over Arizona 3-2, gives them sole possession of first place in the NL West.
What a great division this is. So the Dodgers up, half game up on the Rockies, a full game up on Arizona now. Kemp being the hero a couple of days now, is in his return now. Back to Los Angeles. He's been, I feel like he's 100 years old. I feel like he's been playing forever, quite honestly, and getting big hits, forever. But I love, we always are happy in the NFL that last regular season game is always a division game in case there's those good races and good ones here. It's about 25 games or so left. 6 of them, the Dodgers play the Colorado Rockies, and the second to last series, the Dodgers play Arizona. So you definitely are going to have some good matchups in these last 20-some games against the top teams to really decide this thing.
Yeah, as you go out west, really in both conferences, you've had, I think, divisions.
Yeah. Football in the mind.
Football mode is already here. Yeah, you go out west in both divisions, and it has been some great races. So excited to watch this one. The Dodgers, I remember, it feels like around the trade deadline, we were talking to Buster Olney, and he said the team that he expected most likely to miss the playoffs was the Dodgers, one that we had talked about all year. So L.A. not going down swinging after, making that splash play, acquiring Manny Machado and all these things that we thought might propel them after their stellar June.
Probably the most interesting playoff race as it goes down the wire. We'll keep our eye on it. Speaking of things we keep our eye on, can't talk about golf without mentioning this guy.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods. I feel about that. He enters the final round of the Dell Technologies Championships 6 strokes off the lead of Abraham Answer. Yeah, 6 strokes off.
Yeah, listen.
But he's back. I'm sorry, I missed that.
We mentioned him, but he had another first round where he basically doesn't put himself in position to be closer to the lead. So as you mentioned, he's 7 under and 6 back. But the story was Bryson DeChambeau, who shot a low round yesterday of 8 under at 63 after winning last week. He's now just 1 off the lead of a guy called Double A. Man, he's a battery, right? He's the battery. Abraham Answer. Double A.
Double A?
I call him Abe or Double A. His friends call him Double A.
Did you come up with that battery line on your own?
I just came up with it.
Oh,
how was it? Was that pretty good?
I thought that
I
was
want to give Answer a little love.
You guys,
right? I mean, he's actually leading this tournament. I know we have to talk about Tiger, and I get it because people watch and they want Tiger involved. I completely understand it, but I also want to make sure I get a little love to the guy who's leading, and that's my boy Abe, Double A.
Is that the most oft-uttered phrase in a Tiger Woods tournament is we need to give the leader some love, but...
Yeah, but we're going to talk about Tiger. But DeChambeau is 1 back. Justin Rose is 11 under. Rory, Spieth, Finau, all sitting at 9 under. Finau is the one I do think there is that 1 spot left. I think DeChambeau is going to get a captain's pick. He's 9th in the Ryder Cup points. And Phil was 10th, Tiger was 11th. I think we all think they're going to be in. And then Finau was outside that top 12. I think he was 15th, and he's sitting there at 9 under now, 4 back. But I know Trey thinks that he is going to be one of the captain's picks the way he's playing right now, so that's certainly something he's playing for.
Interesting note in all seriousness for Tiger Woods in this one. I have to give some credit, as I always do, the stellar headlines that ESPN Stats and Info writes. Tiger goes back-to-back with a fused back. On this one, but the interesting note is,
I liked it. What did he go back-to-back in?
Well, he's going back-to-back
tournaments
for the 5th time this season, which, again, because of Tiger's history of back problems, we know is a difficult thing. But for him, on the second half of the back-to-back, so to speak, every time this year, he shot a better score to par each of those second rounds. So good progress for him as we talk about the grand scheme of the Tiger year here and what we said at the beginning. It's making sure he gets through all of this healthy. These are nice little boxes for him to continue to check.
But to Mike's point, Bryson DeChambeau has been in the zone recently. In the Zone brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Can I just say, once Answer hits it big, he's going to get a battery commercial?
Oh,
you heard it here first.
Do you think you get a cut of it? I think you should.
No, I want what's good for Double A.
Creative director.
Really hit it.
Did you guys, by the way, I'm just going to let this bomb play and then tell you a little secret. So I'm hosting on Friday with Sarah Spain.
Right.
First topic we're on. He presses the trigger. Sarah just looks over at him and says, I'm not done yet. So you can hit the bomb, and it doesn't matter. And she just kept going the entire
show. Did you guys get scared? I mean,
she never acknowledged the bomb. She never acknowledged the bomb.
Yeah, we don't either.
You guys were definitely scared when she said it.
There's no doubt about it.
I'm scared of them, though, so we're going to go to the next topic. Number 25, LSU picked up his 4th straight win against an AP top 10 program not named Alabama by defeating number 8 Miami 33-17 on Sunday.
Boy, they put it on them. They put 27-3 at half. This was a 3-3 game, and then LSU just absolutely broke it open. The big thing here is what was Miami known for last year, the takeaways. They had a takeaway in every game last season, 31 total. That was tied for 3rd in FBS. They had 0. And they gave up a pick 6. LSU got a pick 6 on the other side, but they got 0 turnovers in this. You like great stories. Nick Brissett, to me, was the running back for LSU. He's a guy who in high school broke all kind of records. He had 141 touchdowns in high school. He is a senior at LSU, and his first touchdown last night, he had 2, was his first touchdown at LSU. He waited his turn, and he was in last night, and he got 2 touchdowns, the first 2 touchdowns of his college career, and he is a senior after scoring 141 in college. You got to love that stick-to-itiveness of a player and waiting for their turn and then taking advantage of it.
I thought millennials and all these new college kids didn't want to stay and battle for spots and all just transfer to the drop of a hat because they're lazy and soft.
There you go.
Give
it up for Nick. Yeah.
Exactly. Interesting for LSU, though, because last night and this year was the first time since 1974 that LSU hadn't returned a running back who had scored a touchdown in the prior season. So they were really starting, as much as we're going to talk about the quarterback position with them, that has been a subject of discussion around there for a while in that offense. Running back was a question mark for the first time in a long time, at least from the outside looking in.
And by the way, for Miami, I remember how hot they started. The huge game last year with Notre Dame, and they took our team apart, and then their last 3 games of the season, they lost. They lost this one, 4 straight losses, all by double digits. So tough loss for them. A big win for LSU.
Big weekend for the SEC as a whole, too. I mean, 13-1 over the course of the weekend, 4-1 versus Power 5 opponents. But LSU looked good. Auburn looked good. Yeah. We all expected Alabama would look good. But it was at least a little kick in the pants reminder when we did see the Big Ten East, which is largely presumed to be the best conference, or best division, I should say, in college football, struggle against some cupcake opponents. The SEC came out and made a statement, LSU being part of that.
They did, and on the other side, we continue to wait for Miami to be fully back now. They've entered the Notre Dame spin cycle of back and not back, and not back.
Right.
How many times did we see that third down stat last night?
Yeah.
0 for in the first half. They ended up 6 for 16, but all of that came in the second half when things were already firmly out of reach. That Miami team in an ACC that we assume was Clemson and them right at the top, all of a sudden seems maybe a little bit more up for grabs on the Coastal side, maybe.
For all the action we saw over the course of the weekend, that game probably has the most ramifications immediately to the rankings next week, because you'll see Miami take a drop, and you are going to see LSU jump up. So that gets you caught up on what's trending. It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio, ESPN2. I'm Jason Fitz, sitting in for Trey, sitting next to Mike Golic Jr. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our phone guests on the show, Pennzoil Performance Line. Gentlemen,
put it off as long as we can.
As long as I can. This is my scenario. I wake up Saturday morning, and you know what? I was so stoked because Saturday was the debut to of the College Football Show on Twitter, my new show that I'm really excited about.
Congrats on that.
Thank you very much. Incredible reception. Thanks to everybody that watched it. We're really proud of it. I wake up Saturday morning. I'm feeling stoked. I'm feeling good. I wake up. I'm thinking, wow. I look over at my phone and I'm thinking, what has happened that my phone is blowing up? And while you guys were out gallivanting, having a good time, I was doing all of these radio hits to promote the College Football Show. And in the process, I was asked many times about Khalil Mack. And I dug in on the logic that John Gruden has never liked young players. He doesn't trust young players. And the Raiders don't draft well. So I told every single show, look, there's no chance. There is 0% chance that the Raiders trade Khalil Mack. So I wake up not only to the news that the best player I can remember playing for the Oakland Raiders has been traded, but also to the Twitter hate that comes with, you said there was no chance all morning long. It was a very dark morning in the land of me as I watched Khalil Mack go to the Chicago Bears.
So for any of you watching on ESPN2 right now, we have all adorned ourselves in black and mourning for Jason Fitz
That's fair.
And the Oakland Raiders coming off this decision. Because, man, you don't often get deals that are so universally lauded on one side and universally criticized on the other. The NFL is a world where we hear a lot of, well, this is a win-win for both teams and a lot of people got better in this. No. Everyone's looking at this saying Ryan Pace and the Bears basically fleeced these dudes in a situation that it boggles most minds that a guy the caliber of Khalil Mack, a homegrown talent, was allowed to walk out of the door.
I will continue to say, too, as I said at the beginning, this weekend's about hope, right, guys? Like, and for NFL fans, you go into your season with hope. For Raiders fans, all that hope just went away. Like, that's just an inevitability. When you watch your best player get traded away, there's a point where you no longer feel the same level of hope going into the season.
I absolutely was shocked they traded him away. I didn't think they would do it either, Jason. I was with you. And what a phenomenal move for Chicago. Again, in case you haven't heard or don't remember what went on here, what the Raiders got back, they did get 2 first-round picks for him. A first-rounder next year and first-rounder the year after that, a 6th-rounder in 2019, and a 3rd-rounder in 2020. So they got 4 picks, 2 of them first-rounders, and the Bears get Khalil Mack and a 2nd-rounder for next year. What I think, not many people bring that one up. I think that was a really good get to get that one as well. This is a phenomenal move for the Bears, and to pay the money as well. I mean, and congrats. I'm getting the exact hours from Riley. Congrats to Aaron Donald for being the highest paid defensive player for mere hours.
Right.
Before that went away. I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised at that as well, that Mack got more than Donald. I thought Donald would be the highest guy, but Mack now is the highest defensive player. Congrats, obviously, to both of them. This is
both very deserved.
Without question. For those that say, oh, that's too much to pay a guy, are you kidding me? When you draft a first-rounder, you pray they turn out like this. You pray. I mean, look at this draft class. You pray that your first-rounder turns out like Odell, who got paid. You pray. These are all guys in the same draft. You pray that your first-rounder turns out like Zach Martin, like they did, and then they get paid. You pray they turn out like Aaron Donald, and then you pay him like you did. You pray they turn out like Khalil Mack, and you trade him? You trade him away? So what does that A say to the rest of the players in that locker room? Like, what the hell? How are we going to get paid? You know, if they're not paying this guy. And to the Raider fans, to you, Jason, I say this. All right, you got all these great fancy first rounders. Say you get one that actually hits like Khalil Mack again, and you get 3 and 4 years in, and he's playing great. Good luck with that, by the way, to hit this kind of gem again. Do you not pay that guy? You're just proving you're not going to pay him. What the hell are you doing?
The only trade that would have made any sense to me would have been star for star. If we'd have been talking like a Clinton Portis, Champ Bailey trade, then I would say, okay, I understand that they wanted to get a different star in. That would have made sense. Trading for draft picks, the couple of things that I have to point out. The Raiders' 2nd-round draft pick from the last 3 years, 15, 16, and 17, are no longer on the roster. They are who they are as a team because they've drafted incredibly poorly. Spare the year that they got Khalil Mack and Derek Carr and Gabe Jackson. That was a very good year for them in the draft. Other than that, they've drafted incredibly poorly. So I can't look at draft picks and suddenly say, oh, that's going to work out. That's why your team is bad right now.
Makes all the sense in the world that they were willing to send that 2nd-round pick out the door with Khalil Mack.
Yes,
and yet, they're using it anyway. We might as well just get rid of it.
By the way, Raiders GM Reggie McKenzie said it was in the final hour that this just hard and heavy. It was not a plan to trade him at all. John Gruden was asked, because there's a lot of conversation about divide and how the organization's being run. John Gruden was asked about it. This is what Gruden had to say.
Do you feel Reggie was truly on board with trading him, or do you feel maybe you had...
They're trying to divide us. People are trying to divide us, and I wanted him gone. He wanted him here. We made a decision as an organization. Mark Davis, Tom Delaney, we all got the information, and we made a decision together. And I'll just say what he said. I read what he said yesterday. It's a decision that we all came to.
Listen, and I get the Raiders can be, strapped cash a little bit wise, but come on. I mean, you can't tell me you can't find a way to keep your best player, the best player you have, locked up under contract through the next CBA and into your move to Las Vegas. I think it was ridiculous not to do.
I'm sure John Gruden's going to die on the hill, and we've seen some of his comments already mentioning that they've got a quarterback who's in the second year of a $125 million deal, and these other teams that are paying these defensive players don't have to worry about all that. But at the end of the day, we're getting to a time where this is going to become more normal, where these cap hits for marquee star players at these spots are going to put this kind of stress on you. You just happen to be the front lines of this, and you spit the bit.
And the Raiders do have available cap, not this year, but in the coming years, They could have handled it.
And this cap wasn't going to hit till next year.
Right.
All these guys that signed the big deals, the big cap number doesn't hit till next year.
And you mentioned the Carr contract. I think it's a really important piece because there's a logical piece here for Raiders fans everywhere that are now going to look at the progression of Derek Carr, who took a step back last year, and they're going to look at whatever Khalil Mack does in Chicago. And they're going to ask constantly, did the right guy get the mega deal? That's the conversation that will be created at this point. Should be noted, the Raiders went from a middle-of-the-road roster age-wise to the oldest roster in the NFL. So John Gruden continues to just get rid of anything that Reggie McKenzie has done, put in his own guys in place.
And the Raiders did trade for A.J. McCarron, so all was good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I gave up a fifth-round draft pick for that, too. Thanks for piling on,
Yep,
Mike.
You got it.
That's spectacular. Coming up, Nick Saban is in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. We'll ask one of his former players about it.
Hey, Golic, if I were to throw the lines open right now to discuss who's the GOAT, we'd have no shortage of opinions, correct?
No, we would not.
But if I asked men to talk about their health?
Crickets.
Yeah, a recent Cleveland Clinic survey found 56% of men prefer to keep health concerns to themselves and not share them with anyone, not even their doctor. Cleveland Clinic is ranked #1 in the nation in heart and urology care, and they've heard it all before.
Make sure to visit clevelandclinic.org/mention it for answers to those 10 questions most men are afraid to ask.
Fantasy football is upon us, and it's time to break out from the cocoon of last season's regret. This year, go with your gut, but don't go with just any gut. Go with one powered by delicious California almonds. 6 grams of energy-giving protein are what you need to dominate the roster and put your competition to shame. And with 4 grams of hunger-slaying fiber, you won't be making any important picks on an empty stomach, like last year, when you picked the kicker because you liked his shoelaces. Own every day of this season with California almonds. More at almonds.com.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey, sitting next to Mike Golic and Mike Golic Jr., and you just heard a lot of reaction to Nick Saban, he was walking off the field after Alabama's big win over Louisville, had an interaction with Maria Taylor, our very own, that has sort of caught fire when asked about the quarterbacks. This is how that sounded.
Well, I still like both guys. I think both guys are good players. I think both guys can help our team. All right, so why do you continually try to get me to say something that doesn't respect one of them? I'm not going to, so quit asking.
Saban fires back at Maria Taylor for a very innocent question about what...
Yeah, she just said you didn't choose a starter, both quarterbacks played. What did you think?
Yeah.
And that was basically it.
Well, apparently Saban thought he didn't like the question. So we're going to go to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. By the way, you can get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline, where we are joined by SEC Network analyst Marcus Spears. You can check Marcus out, by the way. He co-hosts Thinking Out Loud on SEC Network at 7 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. Marcus, thanks for hanging out with us, man. Appreciate it as always, my friend. What's your reaction to the way Saban handled that moment on the sideline?
Man, first of all, good morning, guys. It's
morning.
Early morning. I'm actually getting ready for another show called SEC This Morning. We'll be on radio, myself and Peter Burns, so I'm already up and at it. Look, it was terrible. It was a terrible reaction, and he was out of line and he was wrong, but that is the situation. Maria was doing her job. Didn't ask for him to say if he made a decision or not. It was strictly about evaluation of play. And I get it. He's been asked about these quarterbacks forever, and the narrative has been out there. But this is Nick Saban's own fault. This is Alabama's own fault. We've had radio for hours and hours, television for hours and hours this offseason, and everybody's been howling to the moon that Tua Tagovailoa was the better quarterback. And they've run from this situation, and I get it. You want to respect Jalen, but the narrative was created by Nick Saban. It wasn't created by Maria Taylor. His reaction created the narrative. It kept the narrative going. And obviously, you saw both of them play against Louisville. The game speaks for itself, but it was disrespectful. And, to his credit, I talked to Maria yesterday, and she said Coach reached out to him. And, look, there's no secret about my relationship and my affinity for Coach, but he was wrong, and wrong is wrong. And you have to right those wrongs sometimes and admit that you made a mistake. But he put a call into her. They talked. She said she felt like it was genuine, and it was just one of those moments, man. And the ball over on his side for the narrative that's created strictly out of Alabama to the rest of the nation about this quarterback controversy. And then Maria just asking a question with the word QB in it was enough to make him go over the top. So I thought it was very disrespectful at the moment. I thought it was uncalled for, and he apologized for it, and Maria accepted the apology. So move on. And this is the thing too, fellas. Everybody, like I'm a Twitter guy. MG Jr. know that, and I look on Twitter, and everybody's like, well, why is everybody coming to the rescue of Maria when Nick Saban does this to reporters all the time? The difference is, number one, the question. The question was about an evaluation after the entire game against Louisville on both the quarterbacks, not singling out one. And two, she was doing her job, so it's very disrespectful to say quit asking.
Talking to Marcus
Her
Spears.
job is to ask questions.
My bad, Marcus. Talking to Marcus Spears in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. As you mentioned, your relationship with Nick Saban, you guys won a national championship at LSU together. And we've heard so much, Marcus, the refrain that Nick Saban uses the media to send a message to his players. So when a situation like this comes up, when you were a player and you saw Nick Saban say something inflammatory, go off in a press conference after a game, was this something that got addressed after the fact? Was there a message that got brought to you guys that you said, oh, okay, I understand that sort of vibes with what I saw publicly? Is it as usually clear as people try and make it out to be?
MG, it is, man. And that has been a part of his style with my experience playing for him and coaching. Sending messages to us. I remember our 2003 season when we won the national championship. It was a bunch of messages being sent about us not getting complacent and not listening to the outside noise. And I know a lot of coaches say that and they do it cliche. He's a mastermind at doing it, and he understands the power of the media as well, especially when it comes to him and his team because they get covered so much because of the success. So, yes, he does use it as a message. Here's the deal, though. In this situation, the message is the respect and admiration for Jalen. That's all that answer was about. That answer was about making sure that Jalen Hurts kept his head straight, knowing that Nick Saban had his back. And look, I've always respected him because he does vouch for his players. Sometimes the second chances hadn't worked. Sometimes the messaging hadn't worked. But he's always been that type of coach to fight for his players. And I think that is what this really boils down to. But it just was bad. It looked wrong, and it really looked bad on his part personally. Nick Saban, I'm talking about, by lashing out at Maria like that. But it was definitely about Jalen Hurts, keeping him invested and letting him know that I have your back with this scenario.
Completely, 100% agree. Every coach has an agenda when he gets in front of a microphone. He was going to answer it that way, whether it was to Maria or whether he got in the presser after. He's a guy that pushes a limit, and he overstepped the line, in my opinion, on the field with the emotion of it. But that was a clear message to Jalen and the team. I completely agree. We'll get into more of that a little bit later. I want to get on the field a little bit. What to you was the biggest win or the highest point and then the lowest point this first college week for you?
I think for me, man, how big, and you guys are like this, how big was the Notre Dame win?
Big.
Now, It was huge, man. And Wimbush looked good. Brian Kelly gave him the ability to go downfield, which was my only question about Notre Dame being ranked so high in this preseason FPI college football poll as far as being a contender. But they look good, man. I wanted to see how they would be offensively, losing that run game. Didn't miss a beat. I don't think Michigan is a terrible football team. I really don't. And I know a lot of people are hard on Harbaugh right now. What has he won? I know he's lost a lot of ranked games, which is really startling. But with that being said, I thought they played very well. And I think that when you look at Notre Dame's schedule, the strength is there for them to have success. They're probably going to be a favorite now based on what they did with Michigan. And then, man, I can't get away from how good Tua looked against Louisville. Now, I know they were overmatched, and I know all of the things, but, guys, did y'all see how that offense ran? Imagine Alabama being able, like we've always talked about defense. We've always talked about how good they are, how many pros are on defense. This is a year where you may flip the script and say, this offense is the show to go watch in Tuscaloosa. Tua just makes a difference, man. And then you look at the staple of running backs. You got Damian Harris, obviously, back there, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. All of those guys are going to benefit from this. Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith. They're going to benefit mightily from having the ability to go downfield. You remove guys from the box when you talk about the run game because you got the threat of the deep ball, and then Tua actually diamond and putting it on the money and showing some legs. So you don't lose that element of being able to run, use some quarterback run as well. And then, I hate to do this, and I hate to be a homer, and I'm not trying to be. How good did LSU look last night? Now, there are some things left to be desired, but on that stage, on Sunday night against 8th-ranked Miami, which I don't think the 8th ranking, it was too high based on what we saw last night. But that was a great win for Ed Orgeron and LSU. Defense played great, gave up some big plays, but if it hadn't been for that, I don't know if Miami would have scored more than 10. You look at the offense, Joe Burrow wasn't great, and there are some things left to be desired. I think 3 of 16 on third down, but they were able to run the ball because of the threat of the run. Joe Burrow checked out of some bad plays into some good plays, ended up hitting a home run ball with Nick Brissett down the field. It was just a lot of really good things. And then Auburn got the most important win of the weekend. Auburn beating Washington. Both teams are probably going to be there in the end when you look at talent and how well they can come along. Obviously, there's some things they need to fix. But getting a win over Washington, who I think is probably going to win the Pac-12, that was a huge win for Auburn, a way to get off on a good foot because they have to go through the SEC West Gauntlet as well.
You guys can follow him on Twitter at MSpears96. Check out Thinking Out Loud on the SEC Network, 7 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. Marcus, you're a rock star, man. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Marcus.
We appreciate you.
My guys, appreciate it, man. Y'all have a good one.
It's been a long off season without football, but FanDuel has spent it getting into the best shape of their lives. That means this. FanDuel is ready for more. More ways to play. More ways to challenge your friends. And most importantly, more ways to win. FanDuel also has new options for playing daily fantasy with your friends because the only thing better than winning cash is winning your friends cash. Right now, you can get a $20 bonus when you make your first deposit on FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Stephen A. Age and state restrictions apply.
It's Golic and Wingo.
Ronda Rousey, former UFC bantamweight champion, of course now in WrestleMania.
Let's go back and start with when you knew in your mind, I'm not going to fight anymore.
I never said that.
So there is a possibility that you could go back in time?
There's a possibility that I could go back in time? That's your question to me?
We're sending you back to the future.
Go back in time and fight. Go back in the octagon.
I do not have the ability to go back in time, no.
Spicy little nugget.
Did we just add that Back to the Future cut? All right, maybe that's just me. Anyway, SportsCenter is brought to you by Shell. If your favorite sport is saving you on gas, you have... Wow, this is a new one. Sorry. Try that again. If your favorite sport is saving on gas, it's been a long weekend, guys, all right? South Bend, Friday night, collision course. If your favorite sport is saving on gas, you have 2 new Shell and Fuel Reward credit cards to play with. You save 10 cents per gallon every time you fill up with either. Visit shell.us/getrewards to learn more and apply today. At participating Shell stations only, terms and conditions apply.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. It's rare that I make it through an hour and not as the worst reader on this show, so I feel really good about that, Junior. Making me feel good about myself. Jason Fitz in for Trey, sitting next to Mike Golic Jr. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. And, the opening weekend of college football gives us the opportunity to sort of take a look at the landscape and decide on some winners and losers. I think we can all squarely agree, for example, that the Golic family getting to experience Notre Dame and hang out winners over the weekend, right?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
I think Notre Dame, the defense looked extremely good, getting pressure on Shea Patterson, who had to leave this game for a little bit. Dylan McCaffrey came in and did a pretty nice job for Michigan, going 4-6 at his time in the game. But I thought the pressure on defense, they did extremely well. The running on offense, we knew Wimbush could run. He completed 54% of his passes. Not like he completely lit it up. Going downfield early, he was good. Downfield the last few quarters, not so good. But overall, I mean, you have to be impressed. Maybe we're biased because we played at Notre Dame. Were you more impressed with the Notre Dame win or disappointed in the way Michigan played in that game?
Oh, I thought this was way more about Michigan. Notre Dame's got a lot of things to work on. I thought this was a good game plan by them, especially offensively early on. This is a team that took a lot of very calculated shots at the beginning, knowing they were going to have to ride the wave of those. You have big receivers capable of making plays even when the balls aren't perfect. And Brandon, while he looked much better than he did last year, still had a lot of 50-50 balls up there that in situations, if they were to have to do that more often, I think may have given the ball to the other team. That Michigan offense looked bland and unathletic. It looked bland and unathletic. They weren't able to run the ball, but Shea Patterson really, they were not giving him many chances to put it downfield. It felt like all they did was move the pocket, short dump off passes to tight ends. And so Michigan sort of caught between worlds on offense. Do they want to be this beat them in a phone booth that they've been for the last few years? Do they want to incorporate some of what Shea did well at Ole Miss? I feel like that to me was the much bigger story. Notre Dame's defense was great last year. This is a team that was giving up, I think, 4 yards or 155 rushing yards a game, was one of the better rush defenses Notre Dame's had since 2012 when we went to the title. So that's not a surprise to me. The surprise was how poor Michigan's offense looked.
So as we talk about the winners and losers over the course of the weekend, I know this is with a broad brush, but I really have to look at the Pac-12 as a whole as a massive loser over the weekend, simply because Washington was their great hope for the playoffs in the minds of most. They lose to Auburn in a game where, frankly, you talk about, was it won or lost? How was that game affected? Washington had plenty of opportunity to go out and win themselves a football game, and they just couldn't get it done. They needed better play from the quarterback position, and given the fact that they have some leadership there and that he's not a freshman, I was a little surprised that Washington wasn't able to get it done and look better, because I felt like Auburn left the door open. Pac-12 is in a bad situation.
I'm going to say, if there is a winner out of a loser, it may be Washington. In all honesty, they had a great showing. Now, again, I don't get into the moral victory thing. This game was in Atlanta. This game certainly more closer to the Auburn group than Washington, going all the way out west. And Washington hung with them. The thing about it is, Washington's in the Pac-12. They still have a chance to do their thing, to be the conference champ and still do their thing. So I think it was if they'd have got their doors blown off and went back to the West Coast with their tail between their legs, I might think a little differently. But they were in that game. You're right. They had chances to win this game. So again, while I'm not going to go too overboard and say a loss is a big win for them, I think they're still, because they're in a conference and what they can do, they're still going to be they can still be in pretty good shape.
They can win the conference. They can't make the playoff at this point. That's the unfortunate thing.
You lose an early close game. We've seen all the time. That's still a recipe. Think about Ohio State from a couple years ago. There are plenty of instances of teams losing like that early, especially when the committee takes certain things into account. What do we always hear? They're supposed to take injury and growth into account. Trey Adams, Washington's All-American left tackle, didn't make that trip. Jake Browning pressured on 35% of his dropbacks, went 2 for 7 and an interception on throws when he was under pressure. That's probably the best D-line they're going to see all year.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I would say is that they don't have the opportunity in schedule to get that game back. They have Oregon and Stanford as their only two ranked opponents left on the schedule as of right now, and those guys aren't.
I'll say it right now. They run the table. They're in the playoff.
Ooh, I will take that bet.
Right now.
I will take that. I will gladly take the other side of that. That's Straight Talk, Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Frankly, it was just an epic week. College football was the big winner of the weekend. So many great matchups. Coming up, how comfortable is the NFL with the enforcement of its new helmet rule? We'll ask Troy Vincent, Executive Vice President of Football Operations, next on Golic and Wingo.
Maybe they're in.
Remember when you couldn't order a ride at the press of a button? Or get online without hearing this? Or get Domino's delivered to over 150,000 unexpected outdoor locations? Wait, what? Introducing Domino's Hotspots. You can finally get pizza delivered right to the beach, the quad, or the dog park. Not at home? Not a problem. Find a Domino's hotspot near you and get 2 medium 2-topping pizzas delivered for $5.99 each. 2-item minimum. Handmade pan pizzas will be extra asked for this limited time offer. Prices, participation, delivery area, and charges may vary. Restrictions apply. Visit Domino's.com for details on Domino's hotspots.
You know what's driving me nuts?
That I'm the better looking one?
No. Waiting to check out at the grocery store. When I'm hungry, my instincts kick in and I just want to smash through the line.
Well, you should make things safer for all of us and try almonds. They have 4 grams of hunger-slaying fiber, which can be game-changing, even for a man of your stature.
Not a bad idea. But what if I'm in line waiting to buy almonds?
Stick to the self-checkout and remember to breathe.
California almonds. Own your everyday. Every day.
Great news. There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price. And it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio. ESPN News. I'm Jason Fitz, in for Trey. Sitting next to Mike Golic. Mike Golic Jr., represented by Progressive Insurance. All of our phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Y'all can hang out with us if you want to. The phone number, 860-506-5505, 860-506-5505.
And if there's anything I hope that I've taught you youngins,
yes,
it's the fact that working on this holiday will get you this.
Comp Day Gold.
You're welcome.
Hey, Mike, if we take that sometime, like, do we all just go somewhere together? Like, do we still have a cookout?
No.
Yeah, no. I mean, we don't need to spend that comp day together. That's not a requirement at all.
Maybe the whole group of us
You understand
goes...
when we're together for 4 hours in a show like this, it's like multiplies. It's like really like 3 days we're together.
Well, I mean, I feel like there's just maybe we all grill together. Like maybe you grill and I just sit and drink your beer and eat your food.
I live alone, which means when I come in and spend 4 hours with you, I have spent more time with you than I will spend with any one other person for the next 3 or 4 days.
There you go.
Right. I want to make sure I don't go over that time allotment already. You're already getting more than everybody else. Don't push it.
What should I bring to the cookout?
Bring yourself out because you ain't coming to my house.
Yeah, bring a ride home.
Yeah.
Stanza, can I ride with you? We'll all just go together. I'm not letting this go.
Stanza could be over.
Yeah, we're gonna, I was going to say, we're going to
Cliff, Debbie, they're all coming over.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
Evan, the newest a member of the show as well. Riley,
we want to make sure he feels welcome.
Riley's always welcome.
Wow.
Riley's probably going to run there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Golic and Wingo, we're reminding you that baseball season continues to roll along. Obviously, we've got a lot of football we've been talking about, but don't forget to tune in today. Mookie Betts, Nashville's own, and the Red Sox visit the Braves, presented by Exxon and Mobil in Kingsford. Coverage begins at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. I love how Mike throws his hands up every time I give Nashville a little plug. I'm just saying, Mookie Betts, Nashvilleian.
You're from Vegas.
Well, I lived in Nashville for 20 years.
Your place is going to get trashed at the NFL draft. Let me just say that.
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. Like, I'm actually really excited for that. So, but you guys aren't invited. Like, you guys are all invited.
Whatever.
Like, everybody. Okay, no, anybody can come hang out. That's fine. Sure. We're going to get you, we got Troy Vincent coming in just a few minutes. This is Audible. Hot Route. I thought we were going to get a little what's trending, but we're not. We're just going to vamp for a second here because we're about to be joined.
Oh, we got Troy Vincent now.
Troy.
Okay, good deal.
This is what happens. See how we're going to go straight to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I'm still upset about the Khalil Mack trade. That's my excuse. Where we are joined by Troy Vincent, NFL Executive VP of Football Operations. Troy, thanks for some time this morning. I appreciate it. The preseason has been all about the conversation with obviously the helmet rule. And when the NFL came into ESPN and sort of showed it, one of the things that was explained by Bill Polian so smartly is that the competition committee's goal is that the rule can be explained concisely, officiated concisely, and coached to correct. Now that we've made it through a preseason, do you feel that those objectives are being met on that rule?
Jason, we've gotten better. I would say where we began going into training camp, after 2 weeks of preseason, we saw a significant adjustment week 3 and week 4 from the not just the call, but the accuracy of the call. what the coaches were expecting, what the players were expecting, what a coach could coach, what a player could actually apply on the field, and then our feedback from the officials. So going into week 3, bringing all those elements together about what we learned, seeing what the film was telling us, we saw the adjustment being made going into week 3, going into week 4, and it's what we thought. We felt like this rule, after real time, there was going to be an adjustment period, and we saw that and feel good about where we are going into, obviously, kickoff. So week 1, week 2, saw a lot of yellow. Week 3, week 4, we saw the adjustment from the player, frankly, from the coach, and as well as the official.
Troy, I'm very interested because, again, I was in the room when you were presenting here, and one thing I saw, you're a guy who has certainly played for a long time, and you dealt with a lot of blowback from a lot of our former players here, like Ryan Clark and Charles Woodson and the rest of the defensive backs and linebackers that are definitely more affected by this. What has your conversation been like with players, current and former, as this rule has progressed, and how difficult has the pushback been?
I understand their why and the questioning of. But and I have to just go as I talk to each individual, in particular the active player. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and as gatekeepers, as someone that has played the position, watching the film, we can't throw science and the engineering out. So as Woody was talking at our seminar meeting, and Ryan Clark, what is the defense? We got to get that head out of the game. We got to get the shoulder back in. And the one thing that we think about, and as we came up with the rule, I have an appreciation for Ronnie Lott, Willie Lanier, Curtis Martin, Derek Brooks, Patrick Kearney. So we didn't come up with the rule in a vacuum. We were looking at the video, the science, and we didn't like some of the things that we're seeing. And we're thinking about the long-term well-being, the quality of life for you, for your dad. So we had to make some adjustments, and we're seeing the players adjust. So, but as you have the conversation with the current and the former on the why, hey, we got to get that head out. We got to get the shoulder back in the game. It's for the betterment of and the long-term well-being of the game. So it's been a conversation, a different conversation with different people. But when you explain it that way, they understand the why.
Talking to Troy Vincent, NFL Executive VP of Football Operations, also 5-time Pro Bowler as defensive back, as Mike mentioned as well. So one lighthearted one, when you were here and you were explaining, you guys were all explaining it, and Rex Ryan tried to show a tackle, how to tackle on Bill Polian. Did you at any point, again, people visualize this, Rex Ryan trying to do a tackle on Bill Polian, did you feel anyone was going to get hurt?
I did. I turned my head because I was hoping no one was in the room filming it. And I was like, I cannot believe that Polian is actually, and then Rex is about to tackle him. So I moved over, but I couldn't believe what I said, okay, we've done like 9 of these seminars. And this is the first time where I'm actually seeing an illustration from a coach and a former president and GM.
It was really incredible. All right.
It shows the opposite sides that we all come into this on, because Troy's going, I hope no one's filming it. And all of us on the content side are like, I wish we had cameras in here.
Somebody film this and tweet it out. All right, Troy, on a serious note, I've watched the implementation of this for the last few years, obviously taking the head out of the game, which I completely understand. And I've cringed at times seeing some of the calls that I didn't think should have been calls, but trying to understand that it's for the general good overall at times. So, and you try and work through all of that. So as you work through what was going on this preseason, the first 2 weekends, there were 51 helmet penalties called. Of those 51, what percentage, when you guys looked at them, did you tell the officials you guys were wrong on these?
So of that 51, we had after 3 weeks, I just remember because we had the conference call with the competition committee, there were 14 incorrect calls. And the incorrect calls were the ones where you can look at the video, you're looking at the call sheet from the official, and you can talk through it. So there were about 14 of the 60 after 3 weeks that were incorrect. And you saw the adjustment. You saw, okay, if you don't always see it, you're going to have bang, bang. You're going to have incidental contact with the face mask. You're going to have incidental contact with the helmet. Don't call that if you're not certain. We'll pick it up on Monday. We'll pick it up Monday and Tuesday, John and I, after we review the tape. But incidental contact, inadvertent contact will occur.
So, Troy, on top of all of this, one of the conversations we've been having throughout the course of the offseason is the turnover within the officiating ranks. Feels like there's a lot of new officials. How much does that skew what you guys are trying to accomplish out of the gate or make it more difficult?
That's part of the world. We lost 4 great referees. And I would say the bookends is Ed, so we're not going to see his muscles every week, him getting on the mic, and then, Jeff Triplett and Terry and Gene. These were great referees. But we also had 24 that was in we call our ODP, our officiating development program. These men were ready. They've been in our program. We got Ed's son that's now, as we would say, graduated up. It's like our practice squad. So we feel good about the transition. That's part of the game. The men will be transitioning out, and you get new fresh blood coming in, young talent, different eye. So we feel good about that transition because we've been preparing men to step in as the men and women transition out.
And we certainly know that they also have the backup of the group in New York and the people that when video review is called into are a part of this process. And that's where I want to go here, Troy. We know that potentially ejection is a part of what's going on with the new helmet rule, much like the targeting rule in college, but it will require a video review. What extreme circumstances would that take? Because for all the talk we've had about the helmet rule so far this preseason, there hasn't been an ejection. We saw one in college football in a big game last night. What would it take for us to see that on Sundays in the NFL at this point?
Well, we had one actually in, I think it was week 1, the Indianapolis-Seattle game. So we did have one ejection. It is extreme. All ejections, and again, the referee will make that call on the field. But it was important for the coaches and the clubs to know that each one of those plays, because it's a significant play. Unlike a scholarship player going off and you got another 90 to choose from. Here at this level, you only dress in 45, so it's that personnel move off the field is critical. So that review is important. That we review, and Al and Russell York are talking to that referee about, did you get it right?
Talking to Troy Vincent again, NFL Executive VP of Football Operations. And the good thing about what is going on is you can put a lot of numbers to this. Percentages of calls, good and bad, percentages of whether it's those plays or kickoffs or special teams causing concussions, because we know what it's all about. We know that kickoff return has caused a lot of these concussions, and you guys did take some steps with changing the kickoff, and it looks now more like a punt return, the way the players are hitting one another. So what have the numbers been there as far as concussions, or hopefully lesser concussions, by changing the kickoff rule the way you have?
So we're hoping that will decline. Kickoff, the numbers have showed us, and again, we would be irresponsible not to make an adjustment. And we saw our special team coaches, our head coaches, players come together and say, we got to you're 4 times as likely to have an injury on kickoff return. And the clubs, the special team coaches in particular, they came together and they say, here's some options, because we want to keep the foot in the game. But we know that the punt return, kickoff return, high impact play, space and speed, and trying to minimize that risk. We didn't see much in preseason. We didn't think that people would show us much on the kickoff return, but that was a big adjustment. The trap blocks, the wedge blocks, those double teams, those are some big shots that happened in space. We're hoping that we remove that. We're hoping that we see some bigger, now with only 3 guys in the back, that we'll start seeing some more explosive returns come back into the game. But the overall objective is about protecting players from unnecessary risk. We all know that there's risk associated with the game. When we line up, it's all part of it. But what's unnecessary? Let's minimize some of those things that are unnecessary. And that was the steps that the committee, the commissioner, coaches, owners, that's been the overall objective, not to make the game softer, but we got to make adjustments.
We're talking NFL Executive VP of Football Operations, Troy Vincent. Troy, you've talked about a couple of the big items, obviously, that eyeballs are on everywhere, and you mentioned the flags going down in the helmet rule specifically. But one of the other things that stood out in the presentation to me was the tweak in the roughing the passer rule, essentially of landing with your body weight on a quarterback. We've seen a massive uptick this year, 131% increase in preseason of roughing the passer calls. Do you think guys are getting it right at this point?
We're working on it, and as a defender, I'm still adjusting to that one myself.
Oh, you and me both. You and me both, Troy. I hate that rule.
That's still an adjustment for me because I saw a few, and this is where Al and we get into a debate. Hey, Al, I think that was clean as the way, I always ask the question, what do you tell that player to do? What do you tell that player to do? And can the coach it out of them? Can we make an adjustment? So, Fitzy, I'm going to say, I'm on the fence on that one, but we understand why. And we saw when our marquee quarterbacks are out, it changes the dynamics of the season. The season has changed individually as a club, but it changes the dynamic of the league. But I'm still on the fence with that, and I'm working through that one.
Troy, from your lips to God's ears, because you and me both. I mean, that one is just killing me watching that. Who has final say on that? When you just said you and Al Riverine you're talking about, who has final say to decide if that was a right or wrong call when you look at those again on Monday?
So typically, it's over because the call's already been made. Either there's been a penalty, whether it was incorrect or should have been. At the end of the day, I'll say, Al, that was the wrong. We did it this weekend. A couple weeks back was that. I think that was a good clean play. And he goes, no, T, not the way to. No, Al, what else are you expecting? Head to the side, ran through him. So the call's already been made. And now we just go through, okay, moving forward, let's talk about that. Because when we go back to the coach, you're answering the coach's question, we go back and we're discussing that with the player, what do we tell him? And Al, I'm right, since I'm the boss.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, since we'll throw it out to everybody. You can tweet him at TroyVincent23. That's the way to let him know what to think of him. Troy, man, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on with us. Have a great year, man. Thanks for
thanks for having us.
Thanks, Troy.
Troy Vincent, NFL Executive VP of Football Operations. That roughing the passer one, I have to keep stressing it because if you land with your body weight fully on the quarterback and you drive him into the ground, that will be a penalty this year.
I find it so fascinating, just the reaction you heard there. His reaction to that penalty is the same reaction that Ryan Clark and the rest of those guys had to the helmet rule, and how he's able to distinguish between the two, because it seems like if you understand one, you've got to kind of understand the other because the intention is the same. Like, you're at least consistent.
Yeah. I understand why we're doing all this, but to make these calls, and again, a lot of times everybody gets to see the replay. The ref, because as you mentioned, Mike, the ejections have to go to replay. All these calls they're making are not going to replay to confirm the call like they do the targeting in college, which we'll get into at some point. Those go to replay. These don't. I mean, in the split-second calls that go on out there of saying, oh, he was going for his head, when a lot of times they're not going for the head. The level of the receiver is dropping down. They may be aiming somewhere else, but in that split second, the head drops and then the head's hit and you get flagged for it. The falling on the quarterback, I get it to a point. We're trying to drive in, but sometimes it happens so fast that all of a sudden now you're asking the defender in that split second when you hit a guy and your bodies are at awkward angles to have the wherewithal in that split second to roll at the last moment. To me, gets ridiculous at times, and they're doing it in a split second, the players, and the refs are doing it in a split second on the call. So I know it's difficult to do because you don't want everything to go to replay, and I know you're going to have to break a few eggs to make this omelet that they're trying to make of safety. But to me, at times, and I've said it for years, it goes a little bit too far, and it's costly. It's costly in college because the kid gets thrown out, which is ridiculous, and it's costly in the NFL because when you go, my God, it's Troy, as he said, when he and Al talk about it and they disagree and they come on the side of it's a bad call, it doesn't matter. The defense already got screwed in that game and lost 15 yards, and God forbid it was a 3rd and 8, and you just gave them a first down and they go and score. That's the part that aggravates me. Maybe it's the former defensive player in me, but that's what gets me.
Well, it's always going to, but we got to try, right?
Yes, we have to try. And that's why I've always held back a little bit, understanding the reason why. understanding and I don't know the perfect answer because I don't want them all to go to replay to look at it every time, but we see some of those calls are ridiculous and they're wrong.
Well, they are, but they're working through them on the fly, and it's like, I'll go back to it.
I'm not just saying that the helmet rule this year. I'm saying they've been doing this for a few years now, and they're still getting them wrong.
I understand it, but refs get calls all
I know they do.
all the time in other aspects. Like, to me, outside of the ejection where we've had, like you pointed out, the one instance of that's the only place this differs. Other than that, they're just getting a call wrong like happens all the time. I disagree with a million holding calls that go on in the body of a different game. Everyone's got calls they disagree with. This one at least comes from a place that's trying to actually protect the player.
And that's such a great point, Mike, you've made before, and I think we have to reiterate, whether it's holding, whether it's pass interference, we as fans for a generation, we've gotten used to certain calls that can be called on every play, and you hate it every time it gets called. This may get lumped into that. What we have to remember is that in the immediacy of right now, it's going to make everybody feel gross in the process of watching it. In 3 or 4 years, it just becomes accepted, and if player safety is benefited in the process.
To the point of why it bothers people more now, holding has been around forever.
Yeah.
And football has been around forever, you know what I mean? But these calls are now have not. Because that's what everybody says. Even the players are saying the game is now different. They understand it, but it's still a change. Where a holding call in 1970 is a holding call in 2018 when an offensive lineman holds, when you guys do that all the time. But the way a guy hit in 1970 and the way the guy hits now is almost completely different. And I understand the reason why, but it's just hard when you're out there and the game, there's 60-some plays in a game and you're fighting for a win every week and you're trying to do the right thing and it's a split second and you get a call and they blow it and you're like, my God, what am I supposed to do here? As Troy said, what's the teachable moment here when you go back that next week for the coach to have to say to the player, hey, you did this wrong or that wrong, or the coach just shrugged and say, I don't know what the hell you did wrong.
Micro versus macro. Troy said it there for the gatekeepers of the game, because you're right. Individual players, coaches, teams, guys in the here and now are going to be frustrated. Guys like Troy in the big picture guys have to look at the long-term viability, and at some point that comes at the expense of the guys currently on the field, and that's what frustrates, I think, most people that play the game.
Hey, Golic, if I were to throw the lines open right now to discuss who's the GOAT, we'd have no shortage of opinions, correct?
No, we would not.
But if I asked men to talk about their health?
Crickets.
Yeah, a recent Cleveland Clinic survey found 56% of men prefer to keep health concerns to themselves and not share them with anyone, not even their doctor. Cleveland Clinic is ranked #1 in the nation in heart and urology care, and they've heard it all before.
Make sure to visit clevelandclinic.org/mention it for answers to those 10 questions most men are afraid to ask.
Fantasy football is upon us, and it's time to break out from the cocoon of last season's regret. This year, go with your gut, but don't go with just any gut. Go with one powered by delicious California almonds. 6 grams of energy-giving protein are what you need to dominate the roster and put your competition to shame. And with 4 grams of hunger-slaying fiber, you won't be making any important picks on an empty stomach, like last year, when you picked the kicker because you liked his shoelaces. Own every day of this season with California almonds. More at almonds.com.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Clever, guys. Let's see what you did there. Presented by Progressive Insurance. I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey, sitting next to Mike Golic Jr. Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Yes, it is.
It's still a little sad for me, but
why is it sad for you?
Well, I mean, my favorite. We just listened to a whole rejoin about my favorite. Like this is the last week of great hope for NFL fans. This is the last week. Like, if you're a Browns fan, you have convinced yourself that somebody's right. You're going to find a way to 8-8, which means you could get to 9-7, which means you could be in the playoffs. That's where fans are today. Raiders fans,
They're not there.
3 days ago, were like, you know what? Maybe 8-8's there and something.
Well, as John Gruden said, hey, our defense was bad last year and Khalil Mack was on it, so maybe this would be better for you. Look at the glass half full. Try.
God.
Quite honestly, your glass is cracked.
You know how many years I've watched bad football? I mean, it's just stunning. The last time an NFL team traded 2 first-round picks for a player was 2010 when the Bears traded for Jay Cutler. They've done it again. They've traded for Khalil Mack. I do want to ask you guys a question, though, because we just heard in the rejoin all the excitement around Chicago, heard that about half a dozen teams reached out. I mean, if you're a fan base of another team, don't you have to look at it and say, why didn't we give up? If all it was going to cost you was no players and a couple of first-round picks, $90 million guaranteed, if you're a Jets fan, whatever it is, any of the fans we heard rumored, aren't those fan bases turning around right now saying, why Chicago?
Well, I mean, Chicago had the best offer. I'm sure. Listen, to think that there weren't some behind-the-scenes look at what deal he was going to sign, and that may have been the best. Everybody has a price. Everybody has a line.
Sure, and everyone has a different cap situation, too.
Exactly.
For all the teams that may have inquired, you don't know, all right, on the back end, yeah, maybe we can get him in the door, but are we going to be able to, once they've talked to the Raiders about maybe what the negotiation looked like there, what kind of dollar amounts, you don't know what portion of that discussion is being had and what each team's relative situation is.
And there is also the conversation of sending him to the NFC. I mean, there is some level of let's get him as far away as possible if we're going to trade him. But for the Raiders, particularly, they trade their best player. And not just their best player, but you can say this, I solidly can say this. Last year, I think it was 35% of their sacks came from Khalil Mack as one individual. In 4 years, he's become one of the best Raiders of the last 30 years, in 4 years of play. Right? When you think about what that means for him just to be sent out for the IFCOM, like the possibility that they can get some sort of return. But the other side of it is it's a huge day for Chicago. I mean, they do get to pair him with Roquan Smith now. It takes a little of the pressure off of them. They get better drastically on the defensive side of the football. And so what? Next year, their first-round draft pick's Khalil Mack. I'd take that all day.
Well, and the fact that they're not paying their quarterback yet. That goes into it. You look at look what the Rams did in bringing in Sue for $14 million, Sammy Watkins deal, the Gurley deal, and then the Donald deal. By the way, Aaron Donald, congratulations for about 30 hours. About 30 hours. You were the top paid defensive player, and then that got surpassed. And oh, by the way, you deserve that as well. But they haven't had to pay Goff yet. But, Mike, as you mentioned before, and I mentioned last week as well, we're going to get to the point where you're going to have two $20 million cap hit players on your team. The cap is going to keep going up. The cap's not going to go down. So you're going to have that. You look at, and there's a chart out there. It was a really nice chart I saw on Twitter about the cap numbers. And remember, all these deals you're seeing with these guys, Donald, Mack, Zach Martin, Odell, they all have the big cap hit starting next year. All these guys are still playing off their fifth year. These were all extensions, not new contracts. So the real cap hit isn't coming in next year. And when you look at the start of next year and you look at the top pass rushers, Mack and Donald fall right into the percentage of the amount they're going to take up of the projected cap, I think, of $190 million next year. J.J. Watt supposedly has the most, according to this chart, the most percentage at 12.5%. Khalil Mack, 12.4%. Von Miller, 12.2%. Aaron Donald, 11.8%. Justin Houston, 11.7%. Some of the top rushers, that's right around the number of amount of cap space you take up, and this will be starting next year. So it's a lot of money. But this is where we're going. You're going to have, I had this stat last week about the cap hit of the quarterback and what was the next highest cap hit of the next player. And there was no 20 and 20s. Well, there's going to be. It's just a matter of time before there's a 20 and 20 because Donald's going to be a 20 guy. Mack's going to be a 20 guy. So is Goff headed that way? Is Trubisky headed that way? We'll see, but it's going to happen. This is a great move by the Chicago Bears. You pray your first rounder turns into Khalil Mack, Odell Beckham, Aaron Donald, Zach Martin. You pray for that. And this guy did, and they traded him away. And I don't want to hear about cash poor. You can't tell me you can't find that money for this guy when he is going to be now extended through the next CBA and to your move to Las Vegas to tell me it was too rich for your blood. You didn't want to pay him.
I think it's interesting to look at this now from the Bears side because the Raiders are going to be interesting in their own right. Oldest roster in the NFL. John Gruden making a bunch of moves that suggest he might try to counter what has been the trend in the NFL, which is more spread offenses, more nickel looks, all of these things where if you look at the personnel moves he's made, maybe he's going for the gut punch the other way. For the Bears, how much of an impact do we really think this has? Because I saw a tweet from someone, and I wish I remembered who it was so I could give them credit, that said as great as this move is for a defense that already, with Vic Fangio on that side and with some of the guys that they've got in tow over there, was already going to be a pretty good defense. How much does this move really move this team if Mitch Trubisky doesn't take the step forward that we all think he needs to?
It doesn't. I mean, realistically, it doesn't. That's the biggest part of the difficulty of playing in the NFC. The NFC is stacked right now.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, your defense can help. Your defense can get turnovers. Your defense can change the tide. Your defense can change.
Does it make you better than Minnesota?
But I guess this is what I say.
I didn't go that.
No.
Right. Minnesota, I mean, that's one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the NFL. So I'll exclude them. But can this defense be what, some of these defenses in the past that have helped young quarterbacks, can it be what Seattle did or Baltimore did or these other teams? Can it have that kind of impact?
So my point to that is, like I say, a rookie quarterback isn't drafted for his rookie season. Khalil Mack was given a 6-year extension. It's not about what happens this year. It's about what happens while he's there, and now what they can continue to build around him once you're figuring out your cap. And again, they got a couple of years to play with before they're going to have to pay Trubisky, depending on how well he's doing. So this isn't a 1-year thing. He'll improve the defense this year, but let's see in 2 years. Let's see in 3 years. What can they put around him to help that defense become a much better defense? But I
guess that's the thing. The defense is already pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
There,
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And I'm not saying the defense won't get better. I should give a little more context to that, to my thought on it, which is, when you talk about the next 2, 3, 4 years, the Vikings are built to be good for the next several years. The Packers just gave Aaron Rodgers a deal that's going to cement him for several years in Green Bay. I can't look at this deal. I look at this deal and say it's great for Chicago, but it doesn't change my thought that Chicago is a second or third place team at best in their division.
This year.
Well,
I will not go beyond this year. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, you never know. But
year.
if we're going to give benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, this year and then next year they can continue to get better, why would I not then also give the same benefit of the doubt to Minnesota and Green Bay and say, look, they're cemented in. They have their quarterbacks for the next several years.
I think Minnesota has more question marks this year maybe than they had last year. Offensive line.
Offensive line's banged up for them. You're bringing in a new quarterback, right, albeit one who's a veteran-proven commodity.
I say that, but Minnesota to me is the favorite in the division. I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then to me, it's looking at Green Bay because Green Bay's got an overwhelming advantage on offense purely by having Aaron Rodgers there. That makes them the best. You could say that makes them the best offensive team in the division just by nature of having Aaron Rodgers there. But even Minnesota, because of all the weapons they have, might supersede that. But this is somewhat of a clock because, as much as we can say, yes, you've got him locked up for a long time, we do know it gets harder when you've got to pay the quarterback at the very least. And so having Mitch Trubisky on that rookie deal means you want this to hit in the next 2 or 3 years.
What happened in Dallas when they got that line? I know they've taken a step back. Seattle before they had to pay Russell Wilson, who, by the way, was a 3rd rounder. So they had obviously time there. The team they built around them, exactly what they're doing in LA before they have to pay Goff, and now in Chicago before they pay Trubisky.
Well, you know what helps protect the lead? A good pass rusher like Khalil Mack, protecting the lead. Brought to you by ADT. Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. Visit ADT.com to learn more. Coming up, the second best player of all time at a position was cut this weekend. So was someone who people in New York thought was the future. We'll get to that.
It's been a long off season without football, but FanDuel has spent it getting into the best shape of their lives. That means this. FanDuel is ready for more. More ways to play. More ways to challenge your friends. And most importantly, more ways to win. FanDuel also has new options for playing daily fantasy with your friends, because the only thing better than winning cash is winning your friends' cash. Right now, you can get a $20 bonus when you make your first deposit on FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Stephen A. Age and state restrictions apply.
Hey, Tubby, have you looked at Willie Taggart on Wikipedia? Have you checked out his coaching?
I can't, get over.
Tubby Smith.
Hey, Tubby.
Hey, Tubby Smith. I mean, are you serious? How many stops have you made, Tubby? And how many... That does sound bad. Tubby Smith, coach. There you go. It was bad.
Can't ignore those things.
I thought you were actually calling somebody Tubby.
No, we were talking to Tubby Smith, and I should have been saying Tubby Smith. I kept saying Tubby, referring to him. And
I was like, man, somebody got body shamed that day.
That's, the further we get from the context of that conversation, the better and better that soundbite is going to be. Bad. Hey, Tubby. Golic and Wingo presented by Progressive Insurance with more than 30 unique coverage options available. Progressive knows small business. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Thought that was supposed to be a sports center read there. It wasn't.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio, ESPN2. He's Mike Golic Jr., he's Mike Golic Sr., I'm Jason Fitz in for Trey. And a lot of conversation, obviously, about Khalil Mack this morning, but that wasn't the only notable thing from the weekend. Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack with their new deals. Also, cutdown day. And it was interesting. You guys were out on Friday, and I talked a lot to Bill Poley, and Sarah Spain and I were filling in, and we talked to Bill about the way preseason works now and how we go from 90 to 53 over the course of a 24-hour period suddenly, as opposed to the staged way they used to do it, which Bill was really in favor of, and Bill also pretty adamant that the 4 preseason games are still necessary. So we see at the very end of the preseason a bunch of big-name cuts. The Raiders were also on that list, by the way.
Yeah, they were.
Martavis Bryant, who they traded a third-round pick for just a couple of months ago. They gave up a third-round pick. Martavis Bryant cut by the Raiders for nothing now, and they don't necessarily have that speed guy on their roster. So more head scratching. But Davis Webb was the big one that stood out to me because, Mike, it felt like just a few months ago, Davis Webb might be the future quarterback for the Giants, right?
Oh, yeah, that's what everyone, when all of a sudden Eli Manning ridiculously got benched, that was a thought process. Okay, are they going to, when they move on from Eli, who is going to be that next quarterback? And Davis Webb, big, strong pocket passer, was thought to possibly be that guy. So now he's not. That was, now I'm not at their practice every day or didn't watch all their preseason games. So I'm not going to lie. I didn't see that one coming. I probably assumed that one, and you know what happens when you assume. So I was obviously wrong on that one, but so we know that he's not the future quarterback for the New York Giants.
Turn your mic on. You are a professional.
Boom.
A lot of tequila sodas this weekend. Yep. Anyway, I think this one becomes more interesting, though, when we look back at the Giants draft now, because regardless of how successful Saquon Barkley is, we go back to the conversation of if these young quarterbacks, and a lot of them are going to get a chance early on, we believe, if they hit in a way where the Giants had the chance to draft them. And now you look at a quarterback draft that people are calling potentially this year one of the worst we've seen in a while. We'll wait. These kids have a whole college season to play, but that decision becomes even more pressing when the heir apparent now is no longer in the building.
Well, and the heir apparent is no longer in the building in Denver either. You get a first-round pick on Paxton Lynch, which I was stunned at the time that they made that pick, but given some opportunity, and he was on the cut pile as well.
And doesn't that have to lead to some conversation about John Elway, the quarterback evaluator?
Yes, it does. Listen, John Elway, I played against him, one of the greatest I've ever played against in my life. But you have to question some of the quarterback decisions that have gone on there.
John Elway and Jim Harbaugh, has any people's reputation as quarterback gurus taken more of a shot than those two in their recent tenure?
Yeah,
with their
and
teams?
It doesn't take anything away, especially from Elway, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback. This is the same like the discussion we had about Michael Jordan. He's a great player, but has not been the greatest executive in the world, especially when he was making picks, and that's fine. I can separate the two and still say one of the greatest player or the greatest player ever, and with Elway, one of the greatest players ever. But yes, that has to come into play, Jason.
Well, and I feel like with Elway, particularly when you see a recent first-round pick at quarterback cut, you can excuse that if there's been a GM change, if there's been a front office change, and you can say, hey, the last guy just didn't get it right. And to some degree, as much as we've talked this morning about some of the failings within the Raiders organization, it feels like there's some changing of the guard happening between John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie. So you can look at it and say, okay, something stylistically changed. In the case of Denver, this has been John Elway's baby, and he gets all the credit for amazing things that they've accomplished, not just as a quarterback, for him as a GM and in the recent years with the winning success. But there has to be some ownership here of Paxton Lynch is not the guy, and now what are they doing? I mean, there's a little piece. They got a 2-year deal, right, at quarterback. So what are they going to do moving forward?
They seem to like Kelly, who?
Yeah, Chad Kelly, is a guy who, when we talk about the quarterbacks from last year's class, probably would have been a part of the conversation much earlier in the draft had it not been for an injury that ended his season prior to that in college. Certainly had a little bit of, interesting off-the-field dust-ups that came up with him, but as far as a talented quarterback on the field, we saw that clearly show itself.
Well, in Case Keenum, I mean, is obviously...
Oh, he's a starter, but we're talking about Paxton Lynch, who's the heir apparent, and I don't know if that's Chad Kelly either, but right now he's there.
Well, and we forget that Case Keenum is 30. So we will get some answers on Case Keenum, because I've said repeatedly, I think when the Vikings, when you want to look at the production the Vikings hope to get in their situation by replacing Case Keenum, I don't think that they're looking for some huge, massive uptick. I think they're looking to replicate that level of production. Right. The question is, can Case Keenum replicate that level of production when he's not in Minnesota?
Right, that's a big question because the weapon, the offensive line, it was pretty good last year there. I know they're nicked up this year. Receivers he had in Minnesota, and certainly being able the conditions you play in Minnesota a little different than in Denver.
Yep.
When the weather starts to get bad. So we'll see. I think one of the other interesting things we wondered would the Jets and the Baltimore Ravens be playing with 3 quarterbacks. We saw the Jets won't be in trading Teddy Bridgewater, and I guess Lamar Jackson did not do enough in the eyes of John Harbaugh to say we can kind of be free of RG3 and he can go on about his business to be either traded or cut. They kept 3 quarterbacks there.
Certainly looks a little behind. RG3, I think, outperformed a lot of expectations.
Yeah, yes.
And there's also that weird balancing act of wanting to use Lamar Jackson as a weapon in that offense and not have him just be the backup quarterback.
So quickly, Mike, for guys now, there are guys that got released, and you you were in this situation, and guys will try and go on. You went to the FXFL. You gave a shot. You went up to Canada as well. Some of these guys now that are still looking to keep that dream alive that got released.
Required reading, by the way. Dominique Foxworth, former defensive back in the NFL, wrote a great piece for The Undefeated on what comes next for a lot of guys that are cut, that are traded, that find themselves in positions where they are at that career crossroads, because you have to ask yourself a lot of hard questions, and a lot of really bad thoughts start coming in. Is this it for me? Is this over? Or am I going to be able to redouble my efforts and try and land somewhere else? It is a tremendous time of change for a lot of guys who are the meat of the bell curve, who live on the back end of these rosters and are just trying to make ends meet for their families and set up a better future.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting point, because even though we're through cut days, there's still going to be guys that made it.
Right.
And so now they think they're living, they finally made it, they got their dream, and they're still living on the fringe, so it can still go away. It's a sad time for a lot of those guys. Coming up, who won the weekend? Our next guest is certainly a strong contender, Golic and Wingo.
Remember when you couldn't order a ride at the press of a button? Or get online without hearing this? Or get Domino's delivered to over 150,000 unexpected outdoor locations? Wait, what? Introducing Domino's Hotspots. You can finally get pizza delivered right